Welcome, my name is Ganji and I am your instructor for this class. The class is a continuation of summary, introduction to summary, but the focus in this one is we will start with the do's and the don'ts of effective summaries. So, having known what a summary is, we say the summary is a condensed version of an original text. But once you're condensing or reducing an original text, there are things you should do and there are those things you should not do. This is briefly the focus of the class, and additional tips will be given hereafter. So, having known what a summary is, there are things that will start with those you should do, and there are others that you should not do. At most, in your sentence structure, once you're coming up with your summary, writing or reducing the original text, in your writing or your sentence structure, you should consider the colons and the semicolons. You don't have to misuse them. Once you're writing, avoid starting your summary with a semicolon, or also avoid writing starting your summary with a full colon. If you're going to use a semicolon and a full colon, it would therefore mean that you're introducing a list. You are not required to introduce a list unless the text is a list of items that you should introduce. So once you're summarizing a text, it is not good that in your introduction you don't have to use a semicolon for starting to introduce the points. We don't need you to use a semicolon, neither should you also use a full colon. These punctuation marks typically introduce lists, and using them implies a bulleted list format, which isn't ideal for summaries. So what you are required to do, instead of actually starting with a semicolon to introduce the list of items, you should state what points the author presents. So avoid using colon and semicolon for starting your summary. You start in such an order. How one should use a full colon and a semicolon is they are used for introducing list, and it would therefore mean that you're also going to be introducing lists of items in your summary, which isn't actually what you're supposed to be doing. In addition to starting your summary with a semicolon and a full colon, you should also avoid a comma overload. There are a number of learners who think that once they're using or mentioning the points, each point should be separated from the others using a comma. That is not right. You don't have to rely solely on commas to separate multiple points in your summary. You should end the point with a period and use a transition marker to introduce the next point. Don't only use a comma. Actually, should not be. It would be wrong for one to have a sentence that has up to 2 commas without a period. You should end one and then another idea is introduced, maybe using a transition marker. But if you're going to separate the first point from the second, from the third, from the fourth, all of these points are separated using commas, that is not correct. When you overload your commas, or when you overload commas in a sentence, this can create a grammatically incorrect run on sentences. So you should avoid also overloading your summary with a number of commas. It is not right. In addition to that, you should also write your sentences completely. Don't write incomplete sentences. Strive to use complete sentences in your summary. Each sentence should have a subject, and in addition to the subject, each sentence should as well have a verb. Which means if you're going to have a sentence, don't only have a subject alone. There should be a verb. That order, the elements that makes a sentence, the subject and the verb, should at most be there in your sentence. Maybe the performer of the action specified should be reflected clearly, and then what action was performed if it deals with action. That is subject and verbs. But if you're going to use incomplete sentences where maybe you have the subject and then the verb is not there, or you have a verb alone starting with a gerund, for example, and then the other elements are not stated, it would be wrong for you to write. So in the do's, don't use semicolon to introduce your items. Don't use a full colon to start your summary, because it is not a list of items, that's your listing. Don't overload with a number of commas, and then don't also write with incomplete sentences. Let's move on. Still under the structure, the fourth point you should focus more on is in the fair copy of your summary, you don't have to outline your points. The outlining of points only happens in the rough copy. Once you're in the fair copy, summary should not be written in a single should be written rather in a single paragraph, not in an outline format. And in the fair copy, outlining does not occur there. Outlining is only possible in the rough copy. Rough, just as the subtitle suggests, where you can list your points. But in the fair copy, it needs quality work, and all the points that you have developed in the rough copy should all be joined together into a single paragraph. In addition to that, another point you should focus more in your summary is broken words at line ends should be avoided. If a word can't fit in the space that is available, don't use part of the word and then you break it and then the next words are written on the next line. That is not allowed. If it can't fit on the given space, just write the word on the next line. Start writing the word on the next line so that you don't get, because a number would write, let's say you want to write the word come, and then the space is not there, you write CO and then you put a hyphen, and then now the other words would be written down. That is wrong. So you don't have to be breaking your words like that. Avoid breaking words, because once you do that, it breaks the readability. Once a person is reading, the person wonders where these words are supposed to be. So write them where they're supposed to be. And then word confusion. You should ensure proper use of articles. You should know which articles to use, whether it is the indefinite ones or it's the definite one. And then also the spaces between these words should also be clear. If you're going to join words, let's suppose compounding is necessary, but if a word is not to be compounded, then you join it together, it will be very wrong altogether. So you should know which articles to use, and then also the spaces between words should be clear. Don't create that wide space, but also don't narrow it too narrow to a point where the person may think it is a single word. So avoid also word confusion. And then mixing points in multi-part questions. If the question is two-sided, it may be required to start with advantages, and then thereafter you are required to give the disadvantages. Don't just bring in an advantage and a disadvantage again. It will be wrong. Start with the part. If you're done with the advantages, then move to the other. But if you're going to go one way, it will be wrong. So start with one, you go to the other, and then also go, if there are three parts, from 1 to 2 to 3. That way, it will be good. When answering a question with multiple parts, address each part within the same paragraph. Use transition marks to signal a shift in ideas, such as additionally, furthermore, however, on the other hand, etc., etc. That tells the examiner that you're done with the part. Additionally, maybe you're adding to the same part, you now want to move on the other hand, which means you're done with a single part, you now want to move to the other part. But if you're going to go advantages, disadvantage in the same part, it will now be confusing to the examiner. So if it is a multi question where there are two parts of that you're required to address, focus first on the single part and then thereafter move to the other part. That way would save the examiner the burden. In addition to the do's and the don'ts, what sentence structure can you have? Let's suppose a passage talks about a number of points. Are you going to write well in your sentence structure? Are you going to be quite clear? Because if the passage highlights the importance of a healthy diet for overall well-being, once you're done with that, is there something else that maybe an additional role of exercise that is given? If it is, we need a transition marker like additionally. It emphasizes the role of regular exercise in maintaining a healthy lifestyle, which means these are 2 points. In addition to one, another one has been added. That makes the reader to know that you have not only given a single point, you have given, in addition to the single point, another one. And then you should also focus on transition words for clarity. The examiner may want you to be clear in your summary. Actually, you should be concise. So if you're going to mix words all together, it might confuse the examiner. So you should use transition words to indicate shift in ideas, shift in presentation of points, and that is what you are required to do. So you should utilize transition words strategically to improve the flow and clarity of your summary. These words help connect ideas and guide the reader's understanding. If you are required to use conjunctions, use them accordingly. If you're required to use transition markers, use them accordingly. But if you're not going to indicate a shift in ideas, the examiner might wonder where you are. And if that is portrayed in your work, then it is more likely that you have confused the examiner, and in such a case, you might not be given the required marks. Remember, a well-crafted summary should be concise and coherent. So, if you're going to write a good summary, be brief. Summary is writing in a brief or condensed manner. You should be concise and should be coherent in your presentation of the main points. If you're given a text, you're done reading, you've noted the main points, you should be concise and the ideas should be joined together. If the ideas are moving far apart, don't bring them. We want the ones that tie together. So we need coherency in your presentation. And as you're going to be coherent, we need it also to be brief. That is something you should remember once you're writing a summary. And then when you're also crafting a stellar summary, it is important that you note when writing a good summary requires careful reading. You are required to read the text carefully, and then you are also required to possess strategic analysis and analytical skills. You should analyze the given text strategically, and then you should also be in position to possess clear communication skills. Once you're done reading the text, did you analyze the text well? If you did, can you present those ideas clearly? If you can't do that, it would therefore mean summarizing a text would be a little difficult to you. So it is important that once you're writing a good summary, you should carefully read the text. After reading the text carefully, you should analyze it. And once you're analyzing, you may be required to note the points that the original text portrays in response to the given prompt. And then now once you're done noting those points down, can you respond? Can you write those points clearly? If you can do that, it will therefore mean you can summarize a given text properly. Here is a breakdown of the steps that helps you excel in crafting your summary. 1, you should read actively. You don't have to depend on someone's reading for your understanding of the text. It's just like a sick person depending on another healthy person taking the medicine on your behalf. You won't get well. The same applies to summary writing. Once you summarize the text, it is important that before you even summarize, you should read the text a number of times, and you should read actively. You can read actively by using a pencil for noting down the points on a given sheet of paper if it is a hard copy of the text. If it is a soft copy, if it enables you to edit, you should keep noting or bolding the points that the original text says. That enables you later to come back to these points that you had underlined or bolded, so that you can say, these were the points that I had noted in response to this given text. But also in your reading, don't only read it once, read it twice. Or if you can read it 3 times, well. But also don't take a number of minutes reading a text, because in the examination, you're not going to focus on a single part. There are a number of parts that you may also give your time to. So don't read multiple times, let's say 10 times. Time will not be on your side. But don't also read it once. Read up to 2 times. Once you're done reading 2 times, it might be possible that you might have noted the initial points that the author presents. The themes might be clear, and then the purpose of this writing might be clear. Once you're done with that, ask yourself, or go to the prompt and say, what does the examiner require me to do? Or does it require you to do? If you figure that out, it becomes easy for you now to present the points you found in your reading. So you should first read. As one of the tips, read actively and read it twice, and then as you're reading, note down points. Those points help you in your presentation. Second, you should focus you should focus on the text, and then you should also take notes. As you're reading, during your second reading, you should pay attention on the details. Close attention to the details. Consider taking notes or underlining key points and then key ideas that seems relevant to the prompt. If the passage is focusing on advantages of fair play in sports, which points are said, maybe you might be given a chance, assuming the passage says so. Just take note of those points so that later on, if the prompt requires those points, you now use what were underlined. But if you're reading flat, you don't underline points, you don't note them down, how then can you get these same points in a given text? It becomes a little difficult. So the first reading, you read, you don't focus more on noting down points. But in your second reading, once you've understood or comprehended something from the first reading, the second should enable you now to note points. And the second reading would now be in reflection to what the prompt says. So in the second reading, you now keep jotting down points from the first to the last, because also chronology is necessary. The flow of ideas, which points were first, which points were last, and which the first point would appear on the first possible paragraph. I'm not saying all points will be the first paragraph, but if there's a point that responds to the question of the first paragraph, it becomes our first point. If all points are contained in a single paragraph, which were the first in that single paragraph, and then which were the last points in the same paragraph, that should be your focus. So you look at all of them, you outline them down, maybe at the margin or in the space for a copy, so that later you can use this, your outline, to come up with your rough copy or to come up with the points you are required to use in answering the text. And then, in addition to that, it is also important that you internalize the prompt. You should read the question multiple times. When you say prompt, we are saying the question you're required to respond to in the summary. Which question are you required to respond to? And if the question says one, read it more than once. And once you're done reading it more than once, then now you respond to it accordingly. Ensure you fully understand what information the question is asking you to summarize. The text may have a number of points in addition to the single point you are required by the question. If the question asks for one point or one section of point, maybe advantages, disadvantages, and other features, then focus on what the question says. Because the question might be too broad. It might ask for similarities, it might ask for differences. If it asks for differences, then focus on the differences alone. Leave there the similarities. If it focuses on similarities, give us the similarities alone. That is what is important, which means once you're done reading, once you're done noting down your points, and the points are dependent upon the question, then it is important you should respond to the question you require. Don't bring in unnecessary information. If you do that, it will be wrong. And then it is also important you identify key points in the passage. Once you're done noting down your points and you want clarity of explanation, return to the passage. Get back to the passage with the question in mind, the question that you're required to respond to. You now go for details. You want explanation, but in this case, you would want to paraphrase. You would want to quote some line from the passage, go back and check from the paragraphs that were there, which point are you required to use to explain a given, which example can you give to explain a point? Those are things called highlight or underline section that directly addresses the points raised in the question. If the question asks for similarities, go back to the passage and highlight those points that respond to the similarities. It will help the examiner. And then you should as well, still in the key points, you should think critically. You don't just have to rush into answering or raising points. Once you're done reading the text, you should think critically. You look at the various sides, and then you look at the strongest presented points, and then you look at the weak points, and then which points are necessary. Look at all of those, and then you respond accordingly. So think critically. Don't simply copy everything you've highlighted. You might be wrong in your highlighting. You might have highlighted points you shouldn't have. So don't just rush into highlighting points. Then now I'm done with highlighting. Let me transfer these points. It will be very wrong. You first go in an order. Look at the points. Which points were presented. And then in addition to that, don't just copy everything. Analyze the information and identify the most essential points, which were the major points that answers the question effectively. Your focus is on how effective can you answer this question with the given points. Some of the points might not be the right ones. Keep the wrong points aside. Focus more on the right points, because that enables you to effectively answer the question. So you should think critically, having generated your points. Don't just rush. I have underlined points. So be it. Let me just take them. You're going to be wrong. You might have underlined points that are not right. So you should think critically. From these points, I think this does not respond to this question. Keep those aside. And then the ones that answers the question, you now take them to where they are supposed to be, possibly either the rough copy or the fair copy. In addition to thinking critically, you should also craft a title. A title is generated from the question. What does the question say? And you develop the title from the question. In the question, it is more likely that you to respond to possibly how certain points that were raised in the summary should be. So your title should be based on the question, and then in addition to it being based on the question, it should also present the main ideas of the summary. You should create a concise and informative title for your rough copy, and even the same title for the rough copy should be transferred to the fair copy. So if your title says advantages of girl-child education, the same should be applied in the fair copy. But one thing you should take note in coming up with your title is, don't write every word of the title in capital letters. Don't. Capitalize proper nouns and capitalize the first letter of your title. If you're going to write everything in capital letters, it will become wrong. So once you're crafting your title, which is in response to the question and also in response to the main ideas of the summary, don't write it in all caps. It will be wrong. It will totally be wrong for you to come up with a title which is in all caps. But the title should capture the main question and then the main ideas of the summary. And then it should not be in all caps. It should both be in the rough copy and even the fair copy. If you're going to have a rough copy without a title, it will be wrong. Even when no marks will be given for the rough copy, still your rough copy should have a title, and the points there are outlined. The same title for the rough copy should also be used in the fair copy. That is something you should not forget. And then still, in the rough copy, you should also organize your rough copy in an outline form. It can be in an outline form or in a paragraph form. You can outline them in the form of 1, 2, 3. You can use bullets for outlining your points. You can use Roman numerals for outlining your points. That is one option of the rough copy. In addition to that, you can as well maintain the key points in a single paragraph form. But once it is in a single paragraph form, which means you're going to use transition markers in the same paragraph to skip from the first to the second, second to the third, and third to the last. That is something you should take note of. So in the rough copy, it can be in an outline form, or it can also be in a paragraph form. You can choose any one of that form. And this can help you organize your thoughts and structure of your summary without difficulty. So the rough should either be in bullet form, or you can paragraph the main points that the prompt requires you to respond to. Still you need to also refine and polish your words. Count the words. The question might have said in not more than, let's say, 70 words. Once you've written your work, count the words and then edit. You need to edit. Once editing, you're checking for weaknesses. It could be weakness in spelling, weakness in punctuation. Maybe you're not that clear, you're not that accurate. Those are things you should be checking. Maybe your sentence structure isn't that necessary, or you have a subject, there's no verb, there's no such variation, is not there. It would mean that you need to check for those errors and rectify them. You need to estimate the word count in your rough copy. If the rough copy, let's say, if the question says write in about 100 words and your rough copy is in 60 words, it would mean you left out some key points that you're supposed to get in the same paragraph or in the same passage. Or let's suppose you are to write in 100 words and your rough copy is in over 150 words. It would therefore mean you added in unnecessary points. So you should write within a specified word count. If it exceeds the limit, consider policing. If it is below the limit, there are points left out. Go back, add those points in the rough copy. Still, in the while refining and policing your rough copy, you should focus on clarity. Explain your rough copy. Ensure your rough copy is clear and easy to understand. You should be the first to understand your rough copy so that the examiner will be the second. This would make it easier to transfer the information to the fair copy. If you don't understand the rough copy yourself, how then do you expect the examiner to understand your work? So you should understand the work yourself for the examiner to also understand the work. And you should use a simple language. You're not encouraged to be complex in your presentation. Use a language that you yourself you're familiar with. And yes, the examiner might be familiar with your language, but if you've not understood the words, you might have used words wrongly. So you use a familiar and simple language that enables the examiner to understand. Once you're done with your rough copy, we now move to the fair copy, because even in the examination, the examiner will give you the rough copy on a section and then the fair copy on another section with lines in between. So you should look at the rough copy and you outline the points, and the points that you outline should be in reflection to the word count that is stated and should also respond to the specified question. Once you're done with the rough copy, we now move to the fair copy. And in the fair copy, transfer the title that you had used in the rough copy. The title you used in your rough copy should be the same title you will use in the fair copy. If it says advantages of education to a society, assuming the text talks about such, the same title should be both be in the rough copy and in the fair copy. And then the fair copy should be in one paragraph. We said the rough copy can be in outline form. However, the fair copy should be in one paragraph and should flow clearly. Write your summary in a one well-structured paragraph, and in the same paragraph, you should use transition words to connect ideas smoothly so that you ensure a logical flow. If you're going to just jam the ideas, you don't ignore this is the first, the second, the third, and the last, or you don't indicate shift of ideas, reasoning, that would not be right. The fair copy should be having a clear title. The title should reflect the title that was used in the rough copy, and it should be in one paragraph. In this single paragraph, don't use commas alone. I say you don't have to use a comma. You don't have to use more than a comma before a period, unless otherwise. So the point you should end a point, start another one, end that same point with a period, and you start another point in that order. So you should use transition markers there in and there in. If the points are related, you can join 2 points that are similar using a transition marker to bring in the similarity. In addition to the fair copy being in a single paragraph, then you should also check for punctuation mark, because punctuation matters. Pay close attention to proper punctuation, using commas, full stops, capital letters where necessary. You can end a point with a period, start another one with a transition marker, and you end it with a period. You start another one in that order. If they are similar, use a comma to break it where necessary. And then the other, capitalizing. If it is a proper noun, capitalize. If you're starting a new sentence, the first letter should be a capital letter. If it is a proper noun, it should be capitalized. That is something that deals with the punctuation. So if you're not going to focus on this, it is more likely that you're going to falter. And when you falter, that is punishable. In addition to you paying attention to the punctuation, you should also focus more on the word count, because it is important. The question might say, in about 60 words, summarize a given passage, require a response to the given question. So if it is about 60 words, even your fair copy should reflect the number of words that you've used. Some learners are quite tricky, and I don't encourage you to, because it's actually a mistake. You may think you're smart, yet actually you're denying yourself a chance of passing. When the question says, in about 60 words, summarize the advantages of education to society, given a text that talks about such, look at the number of words that you've used. Are the words 65? If it is 65, you've gone beyond the word count. If it is about 70, it is more. So you should write within the specified word count. Once you're done, count the words that you've written. Count each word from the first line in the first paragraph to the last word of the same paragraph. And you should indicate the words that you've used in the bracket. Don't just assume that you've used the words, you've used 60 words just by writing the word 60 in a bracket. Count the words you've used and then you indicate the specific words, the total number of words you've used. 85 in words, like that. But if you're not going to, it will now be a problem. You should write your fair copy in one paragraph, count the words, and write the total number of words you've used in number 85 words, and you put those in a bracket. And then also, if I can give a final consideration, focus more on grammatical accuracy. You should double check your grammar and ensure that the tenses in your summary aligns with the tense used in the question. If the question says, how did, even your answer should reflect to that tense. What is? Talk about a tense that refers to the current time. Assuming the text talks about the future, this shall have, this will, you look at the future possible tenses. So if the question, you need to double check your grammar so that the tenses would come out clearly and it aligns with the one that has been used in the question. In addition to the grammatical accuracy, you should focus on wording. Though it is optional, while striving to use the exact word from the passage, it is okay to paraphrase where necessary for clarity. You don't have to copy lines from the original text in the names of your answers. But in other cases, you can use that to explain the point, but not all the words that you come up with should be the exact words that were used in the passage, the original passage. You can use those words, but you can paraphrase, you can refer to, you can maintain the idea of the original author by writing this idea in your own words. You maintain the idea and you write it in your own words. So it is important that you avoid an academic theft which is called plagiarism. Don't copy ideas of someone without referring to the original author. If you're going to do that, it is punishable. And then also, neatness counts. The last part of the summary is called fair copy. We are required to be as fair as possible, right? Quite clean. It is in the fair copy that no crossing should be seen. If you're going to be crossing words here, underlining words here, that would mean you're disorganized, and disorganization is not expected in your presentation. So your fair copy should be clean. Present a clean and professionally fair copy without any unnecessary corrections or crossings. Once you're writing, your spelling should be well written. Every word that you write should be clean, the spelling should be clear, there should be no crossing of any word, and there should be no correction that you as the examiner makes, because if you're going to do that, it is punishable. So it is here actually in the fair copy that it should be too keen. Once you're writing, there will be no distractors, because if you're going to be distracted, you may write a word wrongly, and then now you're going to be tempted to cross such a word. Now it will now mean that you are already faltering, and you shall be penalized if you falter in such a way. Then finally, remember that a well-written summary demonstrates your comprehension of the text and your ability to identify key information. A well-written summary tells us that you understood the text and you can respond to this given prompt by identifying the key points that the author had stressed in the original text. If you cannot demonstrate your understanding, your comprehension, and then you cannot identify the points that the prompt requires you to, or even you cannot respond to the prompt, it will therefore mean you fail to understand this text, and you can therefore not summarize a given text. So for you to be in position to summarize, you must in the first place show understanding or comprehension of the text, and then in addition to that, you should as well be in position to raise the points that the prompt requires you to. If you do that, it would therefore mean you have demonstrated and understanding of the text. This ends the class. I hope you picked something. Thanks.